Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Labor Live at 12:05. My name is Alex Jorgensen, and I'm the Communications Director here at the Alaska AFL-CIO. And this is an exciting time. This is a time that I won't speak for everyone in our office, but definitely for me is my favorite time of the year because it is the start of the legislative session. It is the start of chaos. It is the start of our entire lives and what this state will do going forward. And today we have, I think, the only appropriate guest for an occasion, our incredible political director, Kim Hayes. Kim, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Alex. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so the chaos is, already ensuing. They already had a failed attempt today to override Dunleavy's veto of a revenue measure to tax kind of out-of-state internet kind of providers like Netflix, Amazon, things like that. So I thought today would be a great time to kind of refresh our audience on a lot of the different legislative priorities that labor has, because people might think, oh, labor, yeah, they just care about workforce development, or they just care about your physical safety on the job. But it turns out, actually, the labor movement believes in a lot of different values, and I thought this would be a great time to kind of go over those.
Absolutely. I'm happy to do that, Alex. To your point, the labor movement is a movement. It's not just about workplace safety, although that's where our history comes from, right? So the Alaska AFL-CIO and our affiliates developed 6 kind of categories that we care about. We call them our pillars. And that's how we as a staff decide, what are we going to focus on in Juneau? What are we going to focus on at the local level? What are we going to focus on in the federal government? And so thank you for putting up that graphic, Alex. This is really going to help me along. So, of course, one of the things that's really important for a working person is eventually not having to work anymore. So retirement security is a really important topic that we focus on. Our fight for working people doesn't end when you leave the workplace. We endeavor to make sure that people have security in retirement and a quality of life after employment, right? So that ranges from something in the federal government, such as Social Security Fairness Act, all the way to dealing with retirement systems, which we can get into. We also really care about protecting workers' rights, health, and safety. That's the bread and butter of the labor movement. That's what everybody hears about, right? So the reason we have unemployment insurance, why there's the Occupational Safety and Health Act, those kinds of things are where we come out of, and we definitely have a large swath of bills we care about in that category.
And there's some really niche things in there. I think a lot of people really don't think about. I just think of, if you lose a limb, for example, at work, there's actually a dollar value in state law that you are entitled to in workers' compensation. And sometimes people forget that those things go unupdated for decades at a time. So that's
not automatic. We have to push. And we do always fight to increase those rates. We also care about building Alaska's infrastructure, right? It's not just jobs for our members, but it's also making Alaska a place people want to live, which is good for our economy, which is good for working people, right? Kind of the history of Alaska's labor movement is really tied to the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. So it makes a lot of sense that we care deeply about Alaska's infrastructure. It's not just physical infrastructure, of course, but that goes hand in hand with our other priorities. Obviously, we care about protecting public education. And I say obviously because it's obvious to you and I, not to everybody. Step one, our public school systems in the state of Alaska are largely unionized. So, of course, we're paying attention to that because we want to make sure that our members are being protected. But also, public education is important in democracy. A functioning society needs well-educated people. And public education can include that which happens after high school, right? That we have apprenticeship, we care about college, all that kind of stuff. So,
and obviously, our members have a lot of students in the public school system.
That's right. Exactly. Yep. And then we also care about protecting democracy. So another, this is another bucket that people might not think about, but unions are a democratic system. So we care about protecting democracy. Additionally, union members tend to vote at a higher clip than the general public. So they care deeply about having access to the ballot and fairness and equity. So that's something we also work on. And lastly, a comprehensive fiscal plan. This is maybe specific to Alaska's labor movement, but since I've been on staff at the AFL-CIO for 14 years, Alaska hasn't really dealt with a comprehensive fiscal plan. And we came on board in the 20 teens, with other organizations to say Alaska needs revenue measures. We need to have a fully funded budget. Again, a lot of those are unionized workers, but also in order to have a fully functioning society, we have to have a funded budget for the government so that people can get the services they need. And we stick to that. We need a comprehensive fiscal plan. So these are kind of the priorities we organize our work around when we go to Juneau and we're watching everybody in Juneau.
Yeah. So for the folks at home, if you're ever thinking to yourself, you're halfway through session and you go, you come across the bill and does labor care about this bill? Boom. You can go back to this graphic. It's going to be on our social media and it will kind of help you evaluate what things we're going to be working on in the legislative session. So Kim, obviously every session's chaotic. Mm-hmm. There's always, you can never really predict what's going to happen in the legislative session. But obviously, I think there's definitely a few unique circumstances that we find that our state finds itself in. We've had a lot of pressure from the federal government. This quote unquote big, beautiful bill has shifted a large financial responsibility onto this to the state for several things like Medicaid. I think I was hearing at the majority press conference that they're expecting almost a $45 million budget expense to keep up with the current funding of Medicaid levels that the state is now going to be responsible for. Right. And it's no shock to anyone, like you were just mentioning about our lack of a comprehensive fiscal plan. We don't necessarily have $45 million lying around. And, a big thing that our organization and many others are advocating for is meeting the federal match for federal construction. We need $70 million there to receive $700 million from the federal government. Obviously, a worthwhile investment. So kind of with all that financial pressure in mind, with the fact that we are coming into an election year, a lot of these people are going to be up for election. Kind of what are some things that you think we're going to be really tracking heavily this legislative cycle and that might pop up?
Absolutely. I want to start with the meet the match. If you're paying attention to Juneau, if you happen to go to Juneau, you might see people walking around with buttons that say meet the match. This is not a union only issue. We are working with people in every form of workforce development, the construction industry. This is huge. For folks who don't know, a lot of the times in order to receive federal money, the state has to match a portion. Usually it's 10-90, right? We provide 10%, they provide 90%. Unfortunately, our governor did not provide for that in the last year's budget. So this is something the legislature is going to get a lot of pressure to do quickly in the legislative year, because we need to make sure that that match is made so that we can receive that money if we want to have a highway construction season, which is so important to Alaska's workforce and for us to travel safely and get around. Our roads get beat up. We have crazy weather, right? If you're in Juneau, it's either snow or it's rain, right? And everybody is driven on these roads with frost heaves. We need to constantly be maintaining this type of infrastructure. If we don't have this match, it's going to decimate the summer season. So it's going to be important. We're working with the Association of General Contractors and there was a sign-on letter that's gone around to the legislature about how important this money is. So that's going to be something you're going to see us working on heavily. That's one.
And $700 million. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money that comes into the state. That's thousands of hours of man hours of workers working. So that's thousands of hours of people earning a paycheck to support their families. And that's
putting it back into the economy too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The thing is, when we get that funding from the federal government, some of that is, we all pay taxes to the federal government. So let's get, some of that back to put people to work. But also that's more than Alaskans put towards the federal government, of course. So this would be a huge boon and something, frankly, we've normally done. We've normally been able to provide the match to receive that funding. So this is a bit unusual.
Spending $1 to receive $9 in return.
Pretty good
common sense to a lot of people, I think.
And it's actually how things get built, because it is very expensive to build and maintain roads, especially in Alaska. So this is how it's done. I will also say one of the big priorities of the Alaska AFL-CIO and our public employee affiliates, or any of our affiliates who employ public employees, is the fight to return to a defined benefit pension. That bill is already going to be up. It's going to have hearings at the end of this week and all of next week. It's House Bill 78. It is going to be in Senate Labor and Commerce, if anybody wants to tune in throughout the week. That is a big priority. It's been 20 plus years since our public employees lost access to a defined benefit pension, and we are seeing the consequences. Because we have such a recruitment and retention crisis, we are paying our public employees crazy amounts of overtime, right? It's actually costing us a lot of money to have to be short-staffed and across government departments in our schools. And also the outcomes aren't good when you can't keep people around. We are the only state in the nation without an option for a pension. That's not a good thing. We are losing teachers to Washington State, everywhere in the Pacific Northwest. That's just something I know anecdotally, and the data shows that. So we're going to be pushing hard for a pension. You're going to see us in Juneau talking about that.
And you're going to see a lot of labor lives in the future about this topic. Because as Kim has mentioned, this is, we have a lot of legislative priorities, but this is the white whale, so to speak, that our movement has been fighting for decades. And I think our movement will win. It is just a matter of time and people getting involved. So we'll definitely talk about ways to get involved later.
Yeah. On our bread and butter issues of workers' rights, health, and safety, there's a ton of bills. And to your point, they can seem kind of niche. If you're a home health care worker, one of the bills we're pushing and we're in support of is a home care employee standards advisory board, literally just a board to give recommendations on how our home health care system works in Alaska and where the funding should go, right? Seems really niche, very important. We are going to be fighting really hard to protect paid sick leave, which the voters just approved in the last election. It's been the law of the land since July, and it seems to be a human right to have access to paid sick leave so that you can take care of your family or take care of yourself, not spread illness on the work site. People are coming after it already, unfortunately. So we're going to be fighting hard to protect it. So you'll see a lot of that kind of work. And then on the defending democracy front, continually protecting ranked choice voting in open primaries, because again, the people voted for that. That's democracy. And that's what we're going to, and our affiliates would like us to work on that. I will also say we're going to be looking closely at the governor's budgets, right? That's something, looking for where those cuts are coming from, who's being harmed by those cuts, where he thinks the revenue is coming from. That's always something that's very complicated, right? We have an operating budget. We have a capital budget. We have a mental health budget. We have supplemental budgets. A lot of budgets. And of course, stuff doesn't really start getting spicy on those budgets until the 11th hour of session when they have to pass a budget, right? That's when things get really dicey. We have to pay really close attention. So those are some of the things that are top of mind we're going to be watching. But to be clear, there are hundreds of bills in the House. There are hundreds of bills in the Senate. Anytime an affiliate asks us to pay attention to that bill, we add it to the list. So we are juggling. We're watching a lot of bills.
We are on it. It's going to be, I think, a really fun session. I think every session is fun. Maybe that's just the nerd in me. But I think we are expecting a little bit of a different tone, maybe from the governor. Obviously, the governor is going into his 8th and final year as governor of this great state. And I think everyone has their own opinion about how he's done over the last 7 years. And I think a lot of people have been frustrated by the fact that not much has been accomplished. Like you said, we don't have a fiscal plan. But it's kind of been leaked a little bit in the media that Dunleavy will be proposing revenue measures from my understanding, what appears to be really one of the first times the governor is really actually considering revenue measures. Which I think is a good thing. Obviously, we can have a lot of debate on what revenue measures are best or how to raise revenue most equitably amongst us Alaskans. But yeah, is there anything you think we're expecting out of that tonight, Kim?
Sure. And on that note, so for folks who want to watch, the governor is giving his final State of the State address tonight. He promised it's going to be a long one, so buckle up.
Strap in.
He did have a cabinet meeting, a televised cabinet meeting yesterday that I'm rewatching to kind of glean some information about what to expect, because those are good previews. He has told folks that he is going to be proposing a statewide sales tax that would be temporary and seasonal, which has been talked about for a long time. He's going to be talking about reducing the corporate income tax rate from 9.4% to 2%, which isn't a revenue measure so much as a revenue reduction. And he's going to be tackling that old, I don't know, third or fourth rail of politics, oil and gas taxes of some sort.
Yes.
It's interesting because, to your point, this is his 8th and final year. During his tenure, he has always put a full, or what we would call an unsustainable permanent fund dividend into his budget. His budgets have always been with the last one was $1 billion deficit, not a balanced budget. And he hasn't really been bullish on introducing any new revenues. So it is interesting to see in his final year, when he has nothing left to lose, so to speak, right? He's not going to be up for election, starting to bring up those tough topics. And to your point, regardless of how you feel about sales taxes, oil taxes, we know that Alaska used to rely 85-90% on oil revenue. That isn't happening anymore. It hasn't happened since, I don't know, 20 teens, and isn't likely to happen again. And because of that, we have relied on the earnings reserve of the permanent fund to keep us afloat, which can't happen forever. And so a revenue discussion, as we said, is something we want to have. Other legislators have thrown lots of bills at the wall, right? We've seen an education head tax. We've seen discussions of a statewide income tax, progressive or otherwise, motor fuels, mining taxes. None of them have passed. To your point, today they were unable to override a veto of a small revenue measure that would require not a dollar more from an Alaskan and fall in line with dozens of other states to get some of that more or less corporate income tax from the Amazons, Netflixes, that is already going somewhere. So it'll be interesting to see how members of the House minority think about it coming from a governor they've generally supported, and how members of the majority feel about discussing a statewide sales tax in what is many of their election years, right? So, but it is a good discussion. We're at a fiscal cliff. We've been at a fiscal cliff. So any discussions about revenue, it's a good thing to have those discussions, and we'll be watching those closely because we know that different types of revenue measures hurt working people in different ways or help working people in different ways. And that is our perspective on this. We want to make sure any sort of revenue is going to help fund the budget, put our people to work, and putting our people to work for Alaskans.
Absolutely. And the financial pressure, especially with certain foreign policy decisions that have been happening totally outside of our control.
Right.
Donald, our president, has been pushing for $50 a barrel of oil. Accessing oil that's been locked up in Venezuela. And some people can think that's a good thing, but I think it's pretty agreeable that that's not necessarily a good thing if you're only thinking in terms of the Alaska state budget, which is reliant on oil revenue. So the further the price of oil goes down, the less and less money the state of Alaska has to fund its services. So that will be,
oil and gas taxes are extremely complicated. There's per barrel tax credits, there's everything. And so when we don't quite know what exactly he's going to be proposing, and the ranges of revenue it could raise could go all over the place. So hold on for now to hear what he's going to be doing there. But to your point, things are happening across the globe that we cannot control for in Alaska. Yeah. So having our old main revenue source be only oil and gas is dangerous, a dangerous game to play. But on the upside, maybe we're going to get an LNG pipeline. Alex, what do you think? Is it happening?
I will refrain from commenting so no one can clip what I say and tell me how I was wrong next year. But yeah, so so much exciting stuff happening, and I'm just excited because our team works really hard to make sure that working people are represented in Juneau every single day, and we work hard to bring this information to you, the people at home, on ways you can get involved. So obviously, Labor Lives are now back to a weekly scheduled program, which you're excited about. So we'll be covering topics from paid parental leave to maybe oil taxes to revenue measures to different policies that help working families. So if you at home have an idea of something you want to see discussed on Labor Live, send us a message. We'd love to discuss it. There's so much to cover, and we want to make sure that Alaskans across the state can get involved in Juneau, because obviously not everyone can get on a plane every week and go lobby their lawmakers. So we want to give you guys the tools to express your opinions and make sure your voice is heard. So thanks again, Kim, for being always our lovely first guest on this program as we start the legislative session. And I'm excited to see how this video ends up at the end of the year, to see were we right, were we close, were we, were we right on the nail? So thanks again for joining the program.
One more thing for anybody watching, we are lucky to have a very accessible capital that's very far away. And what I mean by accessible is when we're sitting here in Anchorage watching Juno, we're on a website that's available to all of you as well. You can watch any of these House or Senate meetings or floor sessions by visiting Gavel, Alaska. You can also watch old meetings on Gavel, Alaska. If you want to dig into the meat of a bill, akleg.gov, akleg.gov is your homepage. It's well put together. We are happy to sit down with anyone who wants to go, how do I find out about a bill? How do I read this bill? How do I find a committee hearing? We are very lucky to have coverage of our capital required because we can't all fly there all the time. So please make use of it if you can, if you have time, if there's something you care about, let us know and we can connect you on ways to follow any piece of legislation you want because it is really easily accessible.
And they even have an app.
Woo-woo.
They have an app in the App Store. So if you are
21st century technology,
if you can't get enough of the Alaska legislature, you can have it directly on your phone.
That's right.
So many ways to get involved, and we're going to be keeping you informed. The Labor Lowdown, which is our weekly email recap of what's happening in Juneau, will be going out this week, and we'll be going out every week of the legislative session to keep you informed on how to be involved. So Kim, thanks so much for joining the program, and folks at home, thanks for tuning in for the first Labor Live of this legislative session. It's going to be a great year. I like to be optimistic, so I think it's going to be a great year because we're going to be involved and we're going to be advocating for working families every single day. So again, tune in next week for our next installment of Labor Live at 12:05.